Did you know a staggering 70 to 90% of all non-emergency doctor visits in the US are now linked to stress? Let that sink in for a moment. Stress has become an epidemic, and it's taking a massive toll on our mental and physical well-being. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to be this way. What if you could learn to not just manage stress, but to become unstressable? That's exactly what we're exploring in today's episode, and I couldn't be more excited to dive in with two absolute experts on this topic, Mo Gawdat and Alice Law. Mo is the former Chief Business Officer of Google X and the author of Solve for Happy, and he's on a mission to help 1 billion people find joy. Alice is a renowned stress management consultant who's worked with top organizations and individuals around the world. She's the host of the Unstressable podcast and co-author of their new book on this topic. Together, Mo and Alice bring a wealth of experience and insight to this critical issue. In our wide-ranging conversation, we cover everything from the physical symptoms of stress and burnout to the mental impact of constant pressure. We debunk the dangerous myth that stress is a badge of honor or the price to pay for success. And we discuss how to employ the right amount of stress, good stress, useful stress. As Mo put it, there is a gearbox between the pressure that you apply and the feeling of stress.
Fix the gearbox so that when you apply the pressure, it results in productivity and growth and success and innovation and all of those other things. It doesn't result in burnout and collapse and panic attacks, and right?
While at the end of the day, stress management isn't a productivity hack. I mean, not everything has to be a productivity hack. If other people and your business rely on you, you need to make sure you can be relied on. And that starts with making sure you're at your best and not dealing with chronic stress. I had a great time speaking with Alice and Mo, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. So let's get to it. My conversation with the wonderful Mo Gawdat and the lovely Alice Law. Let's go. Okay, so, well, I have a first question, but the almost more pertinent one, say, is started in what might have been a more stressful scenario, running a bit late, trains were late, etc. You definitely didn't look stressed. You definitely didn't.
Yeah, it's a brain defect.
On
yes.
brand,
Yeah.
on brand. Apologetic, yes, but not stressed. That's good.
Of course. Respect.
I felt like there was a little bit of stress on your face, Alice. A little bit.
Do you know what? It was because I hadn't looked in the mirror since 6 a.m. and I was like, oh dear, should probably check. When you
Someone's going to look at me now.
Someone's actually going to look at me.
Okay, fine.
I also really needed the bathroom, so I was like, you know,
Right.
that was always a bit of stress.
Yeah, there
isn't
wasn't a
You know?
chapter on toilet training. And,
There is a
on
certain
public
level of stress that happens when you're a first number one bestseller. So she just made bestseller for the first time yesterday. And the road to that is actually quite stressful. So you have to give you have to give her respect for, sustaining this so far.
And just so we understand dopamine hits, now that you've been a number one bestseller multiple times, you just don't give a fuck anymore, right? You're like, it happened again. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
So
I honestly and truly never judge anything as good for me or bad for me.
What about the
Understand
first
that.
time? What about the first time?
You never really know, right? So you could become a first-time bestseller, and that would destroy your life. And it happened to so many people. There are so many people.
Well, like yours. I mean, it's been going downhill ever since. It's not great. It's not going well.
I'm happy with it. I'll take this life anytime. But you see, there is a lot to learn about not celebrating or not, condemning anything other than really fully and completely immersing yourself in it and living it. You never really know what is good for you. Becoming a bestseller now, I think this book specifically was delayed 1.5 years, and throughout the process, Alice, of course, having put so much effort in it.
I think longer.
Yeah, no, I mean more than normal. Like in books, normally take 1 year to come out after you've finished them, and it came out at the perfect time. Like really, this is the absolute perfect time for Unstressable.
And it reminds me a little bit of that. I think it's a Persian parable, the "We shall see."
Yeah,
that's
it's in every culture. It's Chinese, it's Persian, it's Turkish, it's everywhere.
Not English. English is this is shit.
It's like
This is bad.
Why haven't we seen yet? We're supposed to see at 1:44.
It was like late, very late.
Why am I not a bestseller yet? But congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Not to Mo, obviously.
Oh, come on.
But congratulations to you. Congratulations to you.
Yes, congratulations. She put in most of the effort, and
How does it feel?
It's still not sunk in yet in a nice way, because we're still on the joyful, just meeting so many people every day, which is so nice. But it's nice to actually see it in people's hands. It's a strange feeling because
I actually have to say what is really brilliant about this is because books normally take time to ramp up there. This one really shipped into the #1 spot on Amazon. And so accordingly, a lot of people got it at the same time. I have to admit, I am so pleased with the feedback so far. You know, we went on the Chris Evans show yesterday morning.
I mean, that'll do it alone.
Oh, he was so fab.
He was
with it.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like he basically said, this might be one of the top 5 books I've ever read. Yeah, and
he made so many notes.
Exactly, he had
The
so
whole thing
many
was
notes
all
on
over
the
his book.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
And so that really, as an author, is what you look for. What you look for is like, did it work? Because I will tell you openly, I hate all of the books I write. And I think every author does. You just eventually go to the audiobook and you're recording it. And you go like, why did I say that? Why did I not say it this way? Why didn't I add that paragraph? Why is this repeated twice in the book? And you just constantly find things that you think you can improve a little. It is a lot of responsibility to release something that people will read and it will be part of you somehow. Yeah. But to find that so many people are happy with it, I think is very rewarding.
And do you suffer a little bit from the issue of expertise, which is as soon as you become the expert in the thing, you're like, well, everyone knows that. Do we really need to say that everyone knows that thing?
Yeah.
And
I have that I literally have that all the time. We have that conversation because I was like, I said this to you the other day. I was like, well, I don't know if I said enough then. You were like, well, I think you don't realize how much anyone who's actually been doing how many hours in a field, right? I must have done over 10,000 hours in stress management, now more, thousands. But you just forget that actually one sentence that changed your mindset 5 years ago is the sentence that will change someone's now that you think is like so
spot on.
Whatever.
Yeah. And repetition. Like my friends that think I'm like, I don't know, they take the piss out of me because I still read lots of self-help books, but I'm quite far in that journey. This is in many ways, I'd say, a self-help book. And and I know most of the stuff in here actually because of what I do in my field, right? And we met like years ago as well, like, similar fields and interest areas and stuff. So I know a lot of the stuff, but when people say that stuff to me, I'm like, well, I still suffer from all the problems that I'm learning about in all the books. So until I don't, I haven't absorbed the lessons. And the only way that you really absorb those lessons is continue learning and practicing. And until I'm there, I need to keep reading them and reinforcing. And I think that's like the right way to approach self-help. If you are, well, perfectly like Mo, like philosophically Zen and understanding there is no good, there's no bad or whatever, there's still plenty to learn. But as we discussed yesterday, you're at least a year older than me.
It's funny you bring that up today.
And I mean, just for everyone to understand, I had a horribly stressful week last week, right? There is an incredible approach in the West to perfection, which never really happens. Okay, you see, the idea is when we promise that you become unstressable, this is sort of like the aspiration. It's not something you'll get at the end of the book. You'll get when you constantly make being unstressable your aspiration, right? And you get closer and closer and closer and closer to it. And then, I'm going through a very tough personal time because of my mom's, health condition, and because of a sort of an unethical business deal that I found myself the victim of, and you have to somehow still stop and tell yourself, okay, I'm not unstressable today, right? But the game is, how do I come back from that state of like, this is way too much, to becoming unstressed, and how quickly does it take you?
Yeah. Okay. What are the different types of stress? And how boring is it for you to still have to tell people like it's new?
No, it's funny. We were talking about this earlier because someone was like, is there any good stress? And so that good type of stress is eustress, right? EU stress. And that is the stuff that actually makes us perform better. It's supposed to go on and come off. It's your natural fight or flight response. Charges you up to be superhuman. A threat's alerted. Let's run away or fight, deal with it. Adrenaline, cortisol curses through your veins, and you get reconfigured to be able to deal with it. And you're essentially put into, survival mode. And a little bit of that just before you need to run a race or stand on stage and speak or have a deadline that you know is due, say, in like 2 days' time, and you know it's going to end then. It goes on and comes off. It's actually good. I do believe that, because it's coming back off. And in that moment, it makes you be like, okay, you know what, I'll do this. Great. I'll speak a bit better. I'll, get that deadline done. But then the opposite of that is stress, the chronic stress that we live in all the time as modern society. And that is the stress that simmers in the background and just keeps our system on, flooding us with cortisol slowly over time, or full on, but like continually dripping in. And chronic stress is the silent killer of our happiness and health. I truly believe that. And it debilitates us when it's over time. It doesn't make us superhuman. It makes us ill. It makes us, a list of things we can go into, but it makes us perform less better.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of like people have had this epiphany around inflammation in the body and how connected that is to various diseases. It feels like stress is very much that sort of
trigger.
Yeah, that I guess emotional version of it.
Yeah, 70 to 90% of all non-emergency doctors-related visits in the US alone are somehow now linked to stress.
Really?
Which is, that's just crazy if you think about it. Because of inflammation, like you say, because of the emotional reasons for why that illness has arrived, and the physical, but it's mad.
So there's good stress, there's bad stress. Typically, audience on Secret Leaders, business and entrepreneurs, what kind of stress do you think they generally are working from a place of?
Oh, for those, it's horrible stress.
Yeah, right. Okay, the third type. Excellent.
I have to admit, I did achieve quite a bit in the business world in my life, and a lot of people don't realize that it's not because I subjected myself or my team to stress at all. Look, life is generous with the stressors it will send your way, right? You don't have to create synthetic stress on top of that. And I think there is a misunderstanding in management and entrepreneurship that we because a bit of stress is going to squeeze 10% more of my performance, I might as well find a way to simulate that, or to produce that artificially, if you want. And my favorite boss at Google when I started, which was a very harsh, very tough manager. I always had a conversation with him end of every January saying, can we please stop the synthetic stress? Right? The business in itself is just giving us enough stress. And his view was like, yeah, but you guys are coming back from holiday and everyone is so relaxed and so on. And I would simply say, look, if you think that we're relaxed by the end of January, you've hired wrong. Okay? Don't stress us, fire us, honestly, right? And the thing is this. The thing is, there are so many other modes of operation in an organization that are so much more productive than stress, right? Stress is basically you pushing the RPM of your engine to 9,000 RPM to get a few more horsepowers out of it, right? You could install a turbocharger, right? And the turbocharger is teamwork. You could install a turbocharger, and the turbocharger is a state of flow where people are allowed to actually be doing their best. You could install a turbocharger, which is fantastic teamwork because people are not cursing each other because they are hyper stressed. And somehow, because these require more talented leaders, pushing and adding a little bit of stress requires a good manager. And I have to say with respect that there is a big difference between the two, right? And I would probably say any manager can be an annoying manager. That's not a skill, right? And it's the easiest way to squeeze 5% more. If you really want to build a beautiful, sustainable, creative, innovative, growing business, you may want to give up the 5% extra and allow that environment where you get 100% every now and then. That basically doubles your business, right? And I know there is a lot of talk that stress is good for you, but that doesn't mean you should go out seeking it. It basically means when it's there, use it for as long as it's good for you, by the way, which is half a day, an overnight one time because you have a proposal coming or a review coming or whatever. But don't make that the habit of the organization. You'll kill the organization. It's basically, if you keep that engine at 9,000 RPM all the time, it will melt. And that's really what happens to us through burnout, and through all the anxiety and panic and so on that we get.
Yeah, I'm reading a really interesting book at the moment, now that I've finished yours, obviously, called Winning, Not Fighting. And it's essentially, like, the concept of it is, in the 60s, for some reason, a bunch of management consultants picked up The Art of War and said, this is the business book that everyone in business needs to read. Yeah. And so all business suddenly became about taking war parables from a book that suddenly has this hilarious chapter of pretending he's Sun Tzu, writing this, hoping that corporations in the 20th century will eventually adopt a war philosophy. But, he talks in a very animated and clear way how that philosophy has permeated throughout business, and war is stressful. Like, I'm sure there are ways of making war unstressable, and I'm sure these are possibilities, but the idea of making that the cultural identity of organizations and companies and competitiveness, right? Yeah. And so his whole thing is about, teaching it through peace and winning and like non-adversarial, and this thing called Wing Chun, which is a martial art. But anyway, it really struck me because I was like, that is a fascinating thing, isn't it? That culturally, everyone would say this actually will drive growth.
100%.
Because if we're all aggressive with each other, it will drive growth, and that will create a culture of, like you just said, my manager being able to stress me. And that perfectly fits into a really big, broad philosophy of the art of war.
Yeah.
It's so eye-opening. You remind me, because I actually read The Art of War when I was a young junior salesman. Yeah. Just becoming a manager.
Because everyone tells you to.
Yeah, and I really struggle to understand where's the relevance. Yeah. Of course, you think about competitors and beating the competition and so on. That's a stupid mindset. That basically means you chose a marketplace that is, already, saturated, and you didn't innovate within it at all. And now you're competing. Like, how stupid is that? Like, why don't you find the blue ocean somewhere, create something new that benefits the world, and, and basically wait for the orders to come in, because you created something amazing.
Well, also philosophically, there's win and help win. Like, you can totally win and help others win, and the pie gets bigger.
100%.
That's the whole point. The other side that most, corporates or corporate managers, I will always use the term, don't understand is the cost of that win, right? It's the cost of the extra 5%. The cost of squeezing 5 to 10% more from your entire team is attrition, is costs of healthcare, is basically them hating everything, and so not fully engaging. It's the lack of creativity and innovation. It's the the feelings of helplessness, that I can't do anything in this organization. I'm just a gear in the machine, and you need to calculate the cost of all of this, because in all honesty, when we at Google had this 20% time thing, people were like, are you stupid? Like 20% of your salaries are going to waste. And we were like, no, even if they don't produce anything in 20% time, by the way, they still work 120. Like nobody at the end of the quarter comes and says, I missed my OKRs because I was working on a 20% project. They still achieve 100% of their OKRs. And then basically give us the 20% more for free. Like wonderful. And the 20% more makes them so excited to come to work, to finish the 100% so that they can put in the time.
When we come back, we'll explore which ideas are resonating most with readers and which ones are proving more challenging to accept. From the physical and mental toll of chronic stress to the dangerous myth that pressure is the price of success. Okay, now for our sponsor, Personio. I'm going to level with you. I'm not the best manager in the world. I'm a decent coach, but management is my co-founder's thing, not mine. And thank God for that, because developing your team is one of the single most high leverage things you can do as a leader, which is why I'm really happy we're working with Personio. They're the all-in-one HR platform you need to handle everything, from hiring to onboarding, handling absences to managing compensation. Their features touch every point of the employee lifecycle, from onboarding right through to exit interviews. And because they automate so much of the boring but necessary HR admin, you and your managers can focus on getting the best out of your people. So, if you're leading a growing business and want to spend less time on HR admin, then book a demo at personio.com/secret leaders. That's personio.com/secret leaders. There's a link in the show notes.
So you both got very different experiences of this. So I want to hear the answer from both of you. In your like day-to-day work, there will be, so you like, just to make it clearer, you used to work at Google, massive organization. Now you have your own team, so you're the boss. And so you go around the world doing speaking gigs and hanging out and sipping on lattes in Notting Hill with me. Actually, neither of us doing any work, but you know, that's besides the point. There's a variety of things. And you actually do plenty of like corporate work and consulting with big companies and everything else. So what are the most common areas of interest where people are like, yeah, we really need this, like totally get you, Alice? And what are the ones where people are like, such bullshit?
I mean, funnily, like, I think
nothing Alice says is ever bullshit.
No, the bullshit question was to Mo. Everyone's just like, why is he just talking bullshit all the time?
Exactly.
What's he doing here, Alice? No, every company, and it's valuable to get both sides of this, right? Because those are two different environments. So what parts of Unstressable are really resonating with people in the messages, and what parts actually seem like, well, you know, but what if?
Yeah, I think a surprising part that's been resonating recently, which makes me super happy, is emotional stress side, and having that translate to actually companies and, you know, executive CEOs actually realizing that their physical stress is emotional because they haven't processed that. So that whole side is really interesting because of how quickly you can turn around a physical symptom of stress if it is emotions that you have suppressed for so long.
Is that a bit like body keeps the score stuff?
Yeah, it is, but it's actually like also, so, you know, with your emotions, for example, whatever you suppress, it doesn't go away. It just sits, you know, what you resist persists, as they say. And it will sit simmering in the background. And it's very common for, like, you know, executive CEOs, entrepreneurs to keep going, suppress, keep going, not doing that, moving away from stress. They harness it all in the body, and eventually the body's like, hello, actually, I'm trying to show you need to release this emotion. So it'll wave at you, having all these aches and pains. And then when you do some emotional release work, whether it's like energy work or actual emotional work, all those pains go away in a few days or an hour. And people are like, oh, well, that's interesting. I've been seeing a physiotherapist for 6 months and it hasn't done anything. Well, yeah, no joke, because it wasn't about that. So that side of actually people understanding the importance of their emotional language, how if you are a leader in a business, you cannot actually lead well unless you've got emotional intelligence to understand how your own emotions are managing, but how you can actually translate that to your team, how that filters in to really create a lot of stress. And that's been surprisingly actually, yeah, twisting in a nice way recently, because you just would think like logical. It's, yeah, been quite eye-opening to see that. I think there's sort of...
How gendered is that, by the way?
Well, surprisingly, it's like men who are actually really open to this. As in, like, that's what's really surprised me.
That man?
Visibly.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
actually makes a lot of sense, because if you're a woman in the corporate space, you're trying to compete with men by outmanning them. Sadly, this is the reality.
The whole
of our
bossy
work.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see, because... yeah, that connection of actually thinking, okay, well, if that changes that, then I should really deal with that. It's a really nice light bulb moment. But the resistance piece, I think, has still been partly, I don't have time. Yeah. You know, I'm so busy. I don't have time to do this.
I don't have time to not stress.
I don't have time to not stress because I'm too busy being stressed. And the irony of that is just so funny. And so obviously, you know, we make time for what's important to us. And you have to think, okay, well, is it important for me to not end up in hospital? Is it important for me to actually get the most out of my team, to be happy, to not have burnout, to enjoy my family and my work at the same time? You'd hope everyone's answers to that would be like, yes, it is important. But there's still a resistance piece, I think, because there's a common misconception in the narrative that to do stress management, to do any of this work, you need 2 hours a day. And that's just not true. And, you know, everyone has 5, 10, 15 minutes. And those little increments can make huge shifts. And when you actually put that in as a priority, then you see huge changes.
Okay. So I'll go to Mo's answer first, see if it's any different in your environments.
I find that it's quite the real shocking thing for me, and I have to say it's maybe because of being spoiled at the early Google, is how convinced managers are of the value of stress, right? How much they believe that they actually have a skill to stress people. Like, hey, look at me, I'm so talented. I make everyone's life horrible, right? And it's not a secret how many organizations we've spoken to that had a case of suicide at the C-level, right? That's not a joke. Like, when you really think about someone who is so fundamental as a role model for the entire organization, who comes to work every day, who is engaged fully, it seems, right? Who you discover afterwards is just unable to cope. And how do we let it go that far? And how does it affect the rest of the team? It's quite eye-opening for me, honestly. And it is the thing that I try to tell people diplomatically is, by the way, annoying people and stressing them is not a skill. Like, really shape up. You need other skills. You need, a leader. We're talking about secret leaders. I love the title because leaders are normally secret, right? They're not the ones that are standing behind and poking everyone in the bum so that they move faster, right? The leader is someone who is so charismatic and, has a vision and believes in what he's doing that he doesn't have to push anyone at all. That if he says we're taking that mountain and starts to run to it like an idiot, everyone follows, right? This is the skill. This is what we need to develop. And how amazing is it if you could achieve the actual result without really having to annoy anyone at all? How amazing is it that at the end of the mission, everyone's like, man, that was so joyful. Like, we loved every bit of it. It's funny for me because it really is just a change of mindset. If you're that skilled and capable to become a leader in an organization, with a tiny bit of a mindset, you can also be an amazing leader in that organization and make it a wonderful, successful, energized, innovative place to be.
Do you think that what you just described is an unstressable organization?
I think is an unnecessarily stressable. How do you say that in proper English?
Title.
No.
Unnecessarily stressable.
Yeah.
It's an organization that is only stressable by the external forces of the marketplace, not by its own doing.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that.
Well, that's the next book. It'll be great.
Yeah, because the truth is, as I always say, life will throw stressors at you. There is nothing in Unstressable that tells you, and here are 14 tricks to stop life from stressing you.
Yeah.
Life will continue to stress you. It's just the skills of stop manufacturing stressors. And, by the way, so many of those stressors you can actually stop or reduce or limit tomorrow, right? And here is the skill to deal with the remaining ones.
Here's a personal challenge that I found in life. I'm wondering if it relates. So I can read Unstressable and I can get a lot of the lessons out of it and hopefully avoid. That's the whole point of being a good teacher, a good communicator, is helping other people avoid mistakes and be healthier and have a happier path to success or fulfillment or whatever that promise is. But in my life, I've overcome multiple different mental health challenges, most of which not very helpful, and I don't feel like I need to overcome them to become a better person. There are more obstacles that get in your fucking way that you're desperate to get over. However, the difference is, the one that I would say is a very, very valuable teacher was burnout. And I got it when I was 27, and I was in bed for a month. Basically, I just could not get out of bed one day, and it felt very much like I had COVID in 2020. And It was very similar feeling. As in, when I had COVID, I was like, my God, this is exactly how I felt with burnout. And I don't think most, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think most busy, self-involved, egotistical, I'm incredible, mission-driven founders, like we all paint ourselves up to be, which of course we're none of those things, but we like to tell ourselves we're these things because we have to believe in ourselves because you're trying to make other people believe in you too. I feel like for some reason you just have to be stupid enough to go through the experience yourself, feel it, experience it, be like, oh, okay, it turns out by working 25 hours out of every 24, I then had to take a whole month off. What's the lesson? Well, the lesson is that was pretty stupid and obvious on reflection, and I've never done it since, right? Now, really very healthy work-life balance ever since. I don't like the time work-life balance, just life. I've got a good sense of pace. ever since because I experienced something. So the question is, how much can we actually accumulate real insight in our lives through reading about the thing versus having to go through the thing?
I think, experience is the greatest teacher in the world, but if you use the lesson, you don't let the lesson use you. And the difference between that is when you actually learn from it when it's beginning rather than when it's actually broken you to the point of, okay, you burnt out for a month, right? But you said you haven't burnt out since then and you were young enough to bounce back from it. If someone is a leader who's like continually getting themselves to a point that like, they're in their 50s, you have to be realistic. Can you survive a heart attack in your 50s? Sometimes not. Like you can't survive a heart attack in your 20s. And, I lost my dad to stress-related illness from a burst stomach ulcer that accumulated and, burst and caused internal complications. He'd been under stress for 7 years and it had been wearing him down in different ways.
Was it having a daughter? Do I need to worry?
100%. It's me. It's 100% all me.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay,
You're doomed.
yeah. Okay, good to know, right? Let me read this again.
But, the difference is, if you see that this has happened to you and you think, right, I never want to go into that place again, then that's amazing because you've managed to return from it. But if actually life keeps nudging you to the point where it's trying to give you a little bit of a stronger reminder because you're not getting it yet, a little bit more, and then it completely takes you out, you're never going to win the lesson, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to decipher, like when you actually need to be aware, to start paying attention. And so often we run through life completely ignoring what it's trying to show us with stress, with any health situation until it's completely, uncomebackable. That's not even a word.
Our English is
Uncomebackable.
I'm learning that neither of you was responsible for the title. Great title, neither of you capable of writing it. Yeah.
So the analogy is quite interesting then, because you're almost saying the only way to learn how to avoid an accident is to have one, right?
Well, I'm saying that that's stupid. I'm questioning, and hopefully that is not true.
So I think the best way to learn, because of course a lot of us want to learn from experience, but the smarter ones learn from others' experiences too. So you count the falling bodies and tell yourself, why did this one fall? Why did that one fall? And interestingly, you'll learn in the process, right? There are layers of challenges to being unstressable. The first of which is a state of awareness that you're actually stressed. So many of us reach burnout because we think we can take it, right? There is a level of awareness of like, so what? I have a headache for the last 3 months. So what? That's fine. For the bigger dream of being a unicorn, it's worth it, right? And you don't even acknowledge to yourself that you're stressed. That's number one. Number two is a level of conviction that stress is a reasonable tax to pay. Like, it's fine, I'm stressed, right? That means I'm on the right path. As a matter of fact, like Alice wrote in Unstressable, it's a badge of honor to wear. Oh, how wonderful. Look at me, I'm busy, I'm valuable, right? I'm stressed. And if you're in any of those stages, you haven't even come close to working on it, right? The third stage is, oh, by the way, I'm stressed and I'm getting crappy advice. So I acknowledge I'm stressed. I actually refuse that I'm stressed. There is a layer that basically says, oh, but I can't do anything about it. No, you also have to acknowledge that you can do something about it. And then there is a layer that says, do the right thing, not any crappy advice. And then, it's not a long vacation or the Christmas party that's going to remove the stress, right? And then there is a layer of, and commit to that practice, like going to the gym, right? I can openly tell you now, secret. If you eat healthy and go to the gym 3 to 4, 5 times a week, you're going to be fit. Knowing that doesn't make you fit.
Yeah.
Right? You have to. So read the book.
Derek Sivers says if more information was the answer, everyone would be a billionaire with a 6-pack.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So read the book 12 times. Nothing's going to happen. Unstressable is written in a way where we say it's a practical guide, and we are really through it all. We tell you now, put the book down and do A, B, and C, right? And the idea is,
which
if
I
you
found quite stressful being told what.
I know.
By the way, feedback.
And yes, by the way, when you didn't do it, we told you that you didn't do it. Those parts.
I heard Mo's little voice inside my head.
It's like,
you
what
hear the audio. It says, we heard that.
But you see, that's the point. The point is, what price are you paying? Of course, it's always easy for someone in my place to look back and say, you know what? I wish I had made $1 million less and spent more time with Ali, my son.
Yeah.
Right? everyone else will say, you can say that because you made the million. No, I can say that because I lost Ali. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? Now, the truth is you start to value things when they're no longer there, right? And you'll value your health when you no longer have it. You'll value your ability to get out of bed when you're burnt out, okay? Just look around you and see how many are not able. And then suddenly you'll tell yourself, hold on, a bit of balance is needed.
Mm. Are you familiar with the time billionaire?
Time billionaire.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I think you'd like it, especially because you've got the billion people happy and talking about metrics of success.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
So the time billionaire is how many seconds you have left on Earth. And at about 20, you've got about 2 billion seconds left on Earth. So I'm 38. So I've got about 1 billion. I'm still a time billionaire. But over the age of 40, you start to no longer become a time billionaire. And I know, sorry. And it doesn't sound very good to say I'm a time half a billionaire because people are like, it's pathetic.
Yeah, I'm going bankrupt.
Exactly. But to this point of, there's many different metrics to work out the stuff, but actually, age and the choices that you make with the wisdom of the time you have left, that's like a very important matrix here, isn't it? In terms of what you're choosing to do with your time, with the awareness of the simple fact of fatality, which is a given, and then how you map out that sort of picture in between, I think it plays a really important part in how to be unstressable.
Yeah, I think it's also like when you think about your perspective, right? I love that concept of time. And if you think, okay, how many...
I invented it.
Time billionaire extraordinaire. The concept of time in terms of like understanding, okay, on reflection, how many days in a row have I actually acted as if I was, enjoying the last day of my life, if that was the last day, whether that's actually in your workplace and you fully engaged in the work you're doing, or whether it was actually with your family, or whether you're on holiday. Did you act in a way that you'd be happy with that was the last day? Or did you consecutively for too many days act in a way that you'd be really annoyed when you left? You were like, damn it, I didn't do that right. And so that time, lesson is, okay, on reflection, if I've spent too many days acting as if, I shouldn't be, then you need to change something. Yeah. And it's really understanding, obviously, from that perspective of, okay, are you going to keep allowing this to go on forever? And suddenly those seconds, like you say, you're no longer a billionaire. Or are you actually going to take charge of it and, use your awareness to take action? Because like you say, you can absorb this as much as you want or understand, I've been doing that for days and then carry on. But making an actual shift requires a bit of practice and a bit of commitment.
I think one of the things about practicing new techniques, or, stress is not a new technique, right? Stress is something that people live with, experience, and then try to unlock. One of the things I found very useful in life is context. And one of the contexts I thought was great in your book was the sort of 4 types of stress. I hadn't really thought about things like that before. So without me butchering it, although to give you credit, I remember them. But please share, what are the 4 types of stress?
That gives you credit, by the way, because most people remember them. So.
That just means I'm as capable as any other reader. What are the 4 types of stress, and how do you actually think they could be especially relevant to understand in context of business and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so 4 types of stress are mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And like the reason, I'm really glad you brought that up, because the reason we wanted to write in that context is because you always see with stress management or talking about this topic, it's bundled into one heap. It's like, I'm stressed. And that's just like, okay, we'll just meditate or just do that. And the reality is it's so much more specific than that in a nice, actually simple way. It's ironic as that is. When you understand the complexity, it becomes simpler. And so your mental stress is actually looking at, okay, when you're mentally stressed, you'll know you're stressed because you're ruminating about the past, you're constantly in your head, you're thinking about the future, anxious thoughts, you can't focus, you're not fully present, you wake up at night with racing thoughts, or you struggle to get to sleep because, again, your mind's still in overdrive, just constantly in your headspace. And then emotional stress is you'll know you're emotionally stressed from one of 2 things, either how you feel or how you're behaving. So a lot of the time we, suppress our feelings when we're stressed, so we think I'm not stressed because I don't feel anything. But, those that don't will either feel stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, easily irritated, apathetic, even depressed, because we know long-term chronic stress can turn into depression. But if you're not tapped into your feelings, the behavioral signatures of emotional stress, so many people will listen and be like, oh, that's me. So it's things like, okay, are you numbing yourself out? So are you binge watching Netflix because you just can't stand to be alone in your own presence?
No. Thanks for asking.
Because you can't stand to be alone in your own presence. Or are you overly going out, overworking, again, just to distract? Is the first thing you do at the end of the day to reach for a drink for stress relief, not because you want to, but just because you want some form of, that sigh? Is your libido dwindling? Do you find your memories lacking? Are you easily irritated and snapping with your loved ones? Has your appetite changed? So are you overeating to comfort eat, or have you lost your appetite? All these different things.
Every time you say those things in a public place, I see the audience go, damn it.
Yeah, because she just named it. She just named everything. Exactly. She named everything that could happen. Are you watching TV? Are you not watching TV?
Are you breathing?
Wait, I'm definitely doing one of those things.
But it's that constant distraction, right? You're trying to numb as much as possible, and your behaviors change. And so when you notice that behavioral system, that's your emotional stress. And the emotional stress comes from not actually accessing your emotions, processing them, and using them to your advantage. Because emotional intelligence is, hugely heightens your intelligence. It allows you to be able to understand yourself, others better. Physical stress is interesting because so many of us have these symptoms, but like we talked about earlier, we just disregard them as being anything to do with stress. It's like from the standard side, your physical stress is like tension headaches, neck aches, shoulder aches, back aches, digestive issues, huge factor of stress, chronic IBS, constipation, stomach ulcers, trouble sleeping again, fertility issues, skin issues like inflammatory things, hives, eczema, all inflammatory, illnesses are very, very linked to stress.
Those very well.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
of them.
Yeah. Wonderful. And then obviously it goes in more chronic, because when you get to that next level, you're looking at things like, okay, increased blood pressure, and then, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, even studies now show cancer, because when you're under chronic stress, cancer expressing genes can be turned on. And so that's obviously the extremity of those things. But again, the minor side is what we always allow ourselves to simmer in for ages until we get to the chronic and we're actually in hospital. And we're like, oh, well, maybe that elevated heart pressure, blood pressure is because of stress, or maybe my, type 2 diabetes. So we let ourselves break with physical stress often before we acknowledge that it is physical. And then spiritual stress is...
my God is not as good as your God. I just realized.
It's nothing to do with religion. So it's spiritual stress is basically, there's two sides to it. One is we become spiritually stressed when we're so out of alignment with our own authentic self. And that is that you cannot answer who you are without answering with a label. So, I'm a mum, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer. That's not who you are, that's what you are. And when we are disconnected from our true sense of self, that authenticity, we're being dragged around by what society, our family, our friends think we should be doing rather than what we know we want to be doing. We become stressed, and we're disconnected from our intuition, which again is guiding you to those better choices, better paths for you. The other side of spiritual stress is when you're like, I know myself well, I'm connected, I've listened to my intuition, I make these decisions. No, you listen to your intuition and then you totally disregard what it's saying. And so that causes you stress, because you'll have those reflections of, I knew that. I said yes, but I felt no. And I knew that all along. And that's then caused me stress later down the line, because it's, led to this, and that. And you just think, oh, why? And that's, what we call spiritual stress. So those four parts of you speak, in these different languages and get stressed in different ways. And when you can understand which part of you is stressed, you can then manage it much more easily, because each bit needs a little bit of different attention.
So quick interlude. Who are you?
It's funny, actually. Someone asked us that this morning and then you had to answer. But so I would say I'm someone who feels more than they would like to accept sometimes. I feel more than I think, truly. I spend my life feeling around, in terms of like, I walk into a room and I want to understand people through feeling rather than through the mind. I spend my life wanting to make people understand them. I search to make people understand themselves better. I'm definitely a calm person, but also, it is the difference between, you can say like I'm calm and I try to be kind and all these things, but I'm also a massive perfectionist who strives to be better and all those things all the time, and needs to learn to be calmer and kinder to herself quite often. So, but I think, my biggest thing is always, I'm just such a feeling person. I spend my life, Mo and I have this conversation where we'll talk about like how we viewed a situation, and I'll be like, it just felt like really like this, and I walked into that room and this person is feeling that, and he's like,
It's 42.
Yeah.
Literally. And we have this, the difference between us is, it's hilarious. It really is.
Yeah, it's actually, I think this is really one of the most beautiful things I like about this book is how completely opposite we are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have the same target,
You get a
the same
sense
mission.
of it. Actually, you get a sense of how they're coming from two different viewpoints.
And very respectful of each other, but also at the same time, it just is a very different spectrum. I mean, for me, the old man, to actually
Poor old man.
to actually
we're
live,
wealthy.
yeah, exactly. To look at some of what Alice brings and go like, because if you had read the very first draft of this, Alice writes so softly, like, I want 3 bullet points, 1 equation, and a number. That's all. I mean, to me, that's the whole book, really.
CRISPR. So I hear that word one more time. So we're ready to make it CRISPR. I was like, no, how?
That actually
CRISPR
was
with an E or not?
no. That was actually our very first month of writing. Remember? Yeah. So. I've written my 10,000 hours, so I don't claim to be a good writer, but I definitely have been battered by editors long enough in my life to know what will come back.
Yeah.
And Alice wrote so softly and so beautifully. You would feel something in your heart, but I don't know exactly what it is, right? And I don't know exactly what does that mean to my mind. And that whole concept of CRISPR, and I was so annoying. I apologize, but
it's
she's
good.
a fabulous
It's a good
writer, honestly. Yeah.
You've mentioned how it's a managerial tactic to press the buttons, push people into stress. Why do people keep doing that, including the people who allow that to be a motivating factor anyway? Why do we keep perpetuating that activity if there's no evidence it's impactful?
I think one side, I'll let Mo answer because I know what he'll say on this as well, but one
42.
side actually that came...
I love having her answer all the questions. Honestly. It's like the easiest podcast I've ever done.
One side came up in a talk we were doing the other day, and I think it's largely that ingrained cultural essence of generational, like people who've been thrown into business at a certain age, not yours.
Even poorer.
They were like, I was pushed to stress, and you know what? This is how I performed, and they haven't managed to get to burnout or properly, have a huge health crisis. That they then are like, well, the younger generation, they should just suck it up and get on with it. So they push, and haven't actually accepted the fact that whether it's Gen Z or millennials or whoever are dealing with from growing up, not millennials, but like Gen Z, from like growing up in a society where you're in information overload, social media since you're 7, 11, 15, your system is wired for stress in a way more, heightened capacity. You're expected to be on your phone all the time and available to your employer. They never had to deal with that. I remember my dad when he, had his business, it was like he'd go to his office, he'd drive home at 5 or 4, he'd do an hour of work and calls at his desk. And then that was it, because no one could get a hold of you. No one can call you because the landline's over at night, and no one can email you.
And he was still stressed.
And this is way before that. This is when he was super calm and enjoying life. And the difference is, it's like, okay, well, that, making that the culture because that was your culture is where this mindset has to shift. And it's now not really ever going to be the same way either, because what was once going to, break you is going to break someone way sooner because of the outside stresses that we've now all accumulated.
All right. When we come back, we'll explore how stress manifests across different cultures and discuss the concept of leveraging stress strategically. Also, Mo and Alice will share their insights on the crucial role of resilience in navigating high-pressure situations and the surprising power of being sensitive. Are you building a SaaS or venture-backed business? Or are you just trying to grow internationally? Well, if potential customers or investors haven't already asked you about ISO 27001, SOC 2, or GDPR compliance, they probably will soon. Achieving compliance can unlock major growth for your company, but the process is often time-intensive and costly. This is where our partner, Vanta, can help. Vanta automates up to 90% of compliance work, getting you audit ready in weeks instead of months and saving you significant costs. Plus, Vanta scales with your business, helping you successfully enter new markets, land bigger deals, and earn customers' trust. As a special offer, Secret Leaders listeners get 20% off Vanta when they go to vanta.com/secretleaders. That's VANT.com/secretleaders for 20% off. There's a link in the description.
Where are you talk about stressful cultures? I think it's interesting. Where are good examples of unstressed cultures? Does that exist? I find it's too easy to say stress is a Western phenomenon, but I mean I've been to the East and they look pretty fucking stressed as well. So
The westernized East. So you're talking Korea, Japan, the capitalist East.
Sure. I mean, what? I don't even say they're chill in China.
Come to Africa, come to Latin America, come to the Mediterranean.
I mean, in Morocco.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Egypt,
yes,
right,
sir.
where you're from. Mm-hmm. You don't, I mean, obviously I'm a tourist and you're native, so this is different, but you definitely don't get like a Zen sense of calm in Morocco or Egypt. You feel like these are the most manic places I've ever been and everyone is kind of like busy.
Are you talking Cairo or are you talking the rest of Egypt?
No, I'm talking Cairo for sure. But I'm talking about busyness and stress.
Are you talking London or are you talking Wales? Right.
So the question still remains. So are there unstressed cultures, do we think?
So I actually did a lot of research. I mean, not myself, but through my friends who live with indigenous tribes.
You know someone who's done research once. You read about it.
So I spoke to lots of my, I spoke to Greg Foster, who was my octopus teacher, right?
Yeah.
I spoke to Jimmy Nelson, whose entire life is focused around going to indigenous tribes and basically taking one photograph. So he spent 6 months in nature. And then he convinces the tribe to allow him to take one photograph on film. How risky is that, right? And the whole thing is really, when you really look at nature, at those who choose to live in nature, you'd think that snakes and crocodiles and tigers should stress them more. They're chill like a cucumber. It's unbelievable, really.
I mean, Australians seem pretty chilled.
You
just described Australia.
There you go. I mean, think about it, huh? There's nothing missing in Sydney as compared to London. You have every quality of life. You're absolutely, you're an advanced nation in every way. But they somehow manage to find time to be in nature, to be with their loved ones, and to, like, literally 90% of the cafes will close at 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m.
I think they're missing the rain.
Yes, and interestingly, I say to a lot of people, that's a choice.
Yeah.
You see, we make.
I think you just blew everyone's mind that rain is a choice. your depth of wisdom has gone off the other end of the scale at this point.
You choose to live in a place, love it with everything that's in it.
Yeah.
Right? It's a choice. You can choose to live in Dubai and you'll not get as much rain.
So you're the guy that brought rain to Dubai.
Other than the floods, yeah.
Set yourself up for that one.
But you'll have to live with the summer.
Yeah.
Right? And there is, I think the whole premise of Unstressable is that it's not the events of your life that stress you, it's the way you deal with them that does. Right? And in reality, a big chunk of why we get stressed is because we choose to allow ourselves to live in certain environments, right? We choose to have kids, right? Most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, some of us don't choose that,
Of course not,
but so for so many of us who choose to have kids, we choose to have kids and then we decide that they're our duty, not our joy and blessing, right? That's a choice. It's a choice for me to be sitting on the train that doesn't want to move and text you and eat myself from the inside, or simply submit to the fact that I can eat myself from the inside. It's not going to move the train, right? It's a choice. And your question was, why do managers keep doing that? Why do we injure ourselves in the gym, right? Because we think that, one heavier weight is going to make me stronger or fitter quicker. But there is always a point beyond which you break. There is that difference between short-term gain and long-term loss. And this is really the challenge with stress, is that in return for short-term gains, you end up in bed for a month when you're burned out. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we as humans, we have a failure in our minds in our ability of assessing the cumulative long-term loss. Right? So what do? We keep pushing. Also, sadly, I think that, like Alice was saying, the idea of toughen up. I've gone through this myself. it has an inherent disrespect for humanity, right? It has an inherent disrespect for the fact that everyone that you've ever hired is different than you. Otherwise, you're hiring really badly, right? The fact that you that you don't really understand how much you're depriving your team of opportunities to be with their families and so on. It could be your choice that you don't want to be with your family because they piss you off, but others may not make that choice. And I think the most interesting is that for some reason, business always ignores attrition, right? We ignore the fact that we have caused a lot of people to leave because you can always hire another person. Right? And then you can tell yourself and put it in your PowerPoint presentation to management and say, hey, by the way, I've refreshed my team. I have new blood in the team. You can always take that one break, right? Where the business doesn't work and then the manager leaves and then you hire another manager and the new manager goes like, look at me, I fixed everything.
But change can be good on both sides. So to play devil's advocate on that, change could also be good for the employee.
Yeah.
That's the smart employee. Right, so the total myth we have in our modern world is that stress is an acceptable tax to pay. Right, very few of us will wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm changing this job because it's too stressful." Because in our own psyche, we're almost completely programmed to believe stressful is good for you. Toughen up.
So here's, I suppose, the not the counter argument, but the thing that I find jars with me in the idea of Unstressable broadly, not specifically this book, but the concept of it. So, and maybe it's because of where I stack lessons I've learned in my life or whatever, but one of my favorite books is Grit by Angela Duckworth. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why, other than I think she's a very good writer and researcher, is I used to, when I was younger, be relatively soft and delicate and, you know, offended and offendable, and
We think you still are. No,
in the right circumstances. But I guess the point is, you know, very victim, like, you know, just a lot of the things. It's very sensitive. I'm still sensitive, but like fundamentally not tough enough, and not like I'm going into the army, and I don't operate like business as war or anything like that, but just to be an adult in the real world, right? Like a normal, modern, realistic person who has to survive in 21st century global society, right? And all the downsides that come with it, and social media and blah, 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 right? It is actually very helpful to learn to be resilient, and it is very helpful to understand how to toughen up a bit and not react to everything, which is obviously the other side to this, right? Which is, that's the point of Unstressable, is
that's the whole point.
Be in control.
Yeah.
But the part that I guess I'm at odds with is this sort of it's a disservice to humanity to be like that. If that makes sense.
There is a place for grit, right? That's
I suppose. Sorry, to reframe it, I guess it's like, where are these boundaries? Like, where does this sort of ladder go? So there's grit and toughness and resilience over here, and then there's like victimhood and the world owes me something and whatever over here. Sometimes that's just an age journey. Like, you start off innocent and young, and you get tougher through life, and you learn how to deal with shit. But like, what are these barriers, and how do they sort of relate to the Unstressable journey? I think that's what I'm trying to understand.
When you're walking on a flat surface and then it starts to ramp up and it becomes a little more difficult to walk up, you need grit, right? Otherwise you slide and fall, right?
No, you need grip, Mo.
Grip, yeah. But you need a bit of like, you know, friction, right? Yeah. If you're entering a roundabout and 3 of the 4 exits are blocked, right? That doesn't help you at all.
Yeah.
Right. And very frequently in life, what ends up happening is that you get into those situations where life wants you to go a certain direction, right? And when you keep resisting, when you keep pushing, you're stressing yourself and getting literally nowhere, right? It's context that really makes all the difference. My challenge is the following. My challenge is there another way? Is there another way? Like, if we are, cutting a business deal, and then the government says change of regulation, technology companies need to be to do A, B, and C, right? One way of doing it is to try and convince the government otherwise, and the other way of doing it is to simply say, can we do X, Y, and Z? Can we do it differently? Do we have to stress ourselves? And by the way, Unstressable is not at all saying don't apply pressure, don't strive, don't try too hard, don't try hard, right? It's simply saying there is a gearbox between the pressure that you apply and the feeling of stress. Fix the gearbox so that when you apply the pressure, it results in productivity and growth and success and innovation and all of those other things. It doesn't result in burnout and collapse and panic attacks. And right, it's a very simple view that we're not saying at all, don't strive hard, and we're not promising you at all that you're going to wake up tomorrow and life will say, you read the book, so now we're not going to stress you anymore. No, stresses are going to happen as soon as we walk out that door, right? But how do you deal with those stressors so that they result in productivity and calm and connections and loving relationships and not kill you in the process?
I think it's funny because you said sensitivity before, and I believe there's a massive difference between sensitivity and taking offense. And sensitivity is a superpower, right? If when you actually are tuned into sensitivity in terms of actually being able to understand more in alignment with actually really in tune with your emotions, you'll be able to understand when you're going to stress someone and when you should pull back, when that's then going to cause you more stress, for example. I'll do that with you sometimes. I'll be like, okay, I know when I'm going to leave this and bring this up because I can feel that Mo's under pressure right now. And that's because I'm extremely emotionally in tune and sensitive. And then I know when I'm like, okay, actually, let's talk about that in business right now. It's the right time. He's got enough space, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of the time when we're not tuned into that sensitivity, it is a superpower because then we cause ourselves and other people around us more stress because we kind of blasely go in bulldozing with emotions and various things that probably shouldn't have been brought up in that moment because it wasn't the right time for that person. We didn't read the room. And the other side, like you talked about, is the offense side. I do believe that the victim mentality and creating your own internal stress from deciding that you're a victim is a total choice. At the end of the day, every single person will be put through adversity in their life in a different way, in a different lesson at a different time. And you can either use that to create less stress in your life by using the lesson and being resilient, creating growth, moving yourself forwards, or you can sit simmering in it and completely draw stress to you all the time by recreating it over and over in your head. So I think that, sensitivity should be tuned into, but in a different way. And that other side should be cut out immediately because that's something you need to work on a deeper level. Like, why are you being a victim? How are you going to get out of that space? Because the only person who's going to is you.
One of the things that is very common in business is talking about, of course, passion, but purpose with a big P. Where does having a sense of purpose fit into an unstressable life?
Two sides, actually. I do believe there's there's an understanding of daily purpose reduces stress. So we think of purpose as this huge overarching thing. And I do believe in that, a greater purpose, having that sense of feeling like you're getting up in the morning to actually do something. But
and what is your purpose?
My purpose, I believe, is to try and make the world a calmer place and to help people to actually tap into that more authentic version of themselves so they can get to that place.
You were born with a voice designed for that, interestingly. It's true.
This keeps coming up.
Yeah, you do. You've got an exceptionally, this frequency of it. It's very calm.
Thank you. It bodes well for my meditation stance.
Yeah. But it goes really badly with Mo. Jarring. Like jagged edge.
Squeaky edges.
That's the problem with age. I had a better voice.
Someone once said you had a voice like melted chocolate on Instagram. I was like, no. And I was like, that's the funniest thing I've heard.
What are they trying to get out of you?
I was like, I bet they did.
We did have hot chocolate afterwards. Yeah.
Okay,
so what were we saying again before melted
chocolate?
Talking about what was the melted?
Purpose. Yeah. So that daily purpose, actually does decrease stress. And daily purpose has actually been okay, today I'm going to take one small action on this, and that moves me forwards in a small way. I'm not looking at this huge picture of my life, but I felt purposeful in the way I interacted with, my partner today. I felt purposeful because I got that one bit of work done, or I actually made myself feel healthier. So enacting smaller daily purpose is a massive reliever in stress because you feel like you've achieved something, and self-esteem, self-confidence goes up. The grander piece of purpose, again, I do believe in that, and I know it's a really annoying word that everyone bands around. Yeah. It's find your purpose, find yourself. And it's irritating when you hear it like that. But I think
and stressful.
and stressful because people think I have to find this huge thing that's going to change the world, or I have no purpose. But purpose isn't about having some overarching world changer. It's about finding purpose in what your life can create. And someone's purpose can quite literally be to be the best mother in the world, to be the best father in the world. You define your own sense of purpose. And the reason you'll know it's right for you is because you've tapped into that trueness of yourself without letting the world tell you your purpose isn't big enough, so you don't have a purpose. But I do think once you find something that you feel like, I can really connect to this, I can really put my all into it, whether it is being a parent, whether it is running a business that you believe in, whether it is running a cause, that drive really does decrease stress, because the resilience you appreciate is on those harder days, you feel connected to something bigger than the stress in that moment that keeps you going and makes you want to come back to calm and then carry on again in the future. I do believe that.
How do you find purpose in this sense then?
I don't know if purpose finds you find purpose as much as it finds you in a strange way. I think these resilient lessons will come in and keep trying to show you something and be like, no, this guide you towards this. This is your, I didn't think I was going to do this. You said, what's my purpose? I feel it's to make people calmer. I thought I was going to be in fashion when I was younger. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I went to go and work for Net-a-Porter after uni, did fashion. Uni did 1 million fashion internships. And then I was like, right, I'm going to go and get a job on the side, be a PA, start my own fashion line. And then life just continually kept showing me stuff to stress me and me to really learn about stress. I do believe that. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm meant to be learning. And I started, doing that side. And my purpose, I guess, for what I really thought I was meant to be doing really did find me. I did not go, looking for it. That sounds very annoying, but I think it's about opening your eyes to what is trying to get your attention.
Yeah, a bit of intuition.
And a lot of the time it's waving at us. Life is trying to show us something and we're always just ignoring it. And then we have to wait for the side swipe for it to really wake us up. It's like, you get made redundant from your job like I did. And, it's like, well, what are you going to do now? And that changes your track. So I think looking at what life's trying to show you and what you're trying to ignore is a huge, huge eye-opener to finding your purpose.
On the journey of finding purpose, though, it sounds like you need to be quite patient. So someone in their 20s reading this will feel very differently than someone in their 30s or 40s. And then actually also works the other way, right? Which is sometimes the wake up doesn't happen to your 50s or 60s and you realize you haven't been attentive enough. You haven't been spending the time listening to that swipe. Or you've ignored it deliberately. Maybe, for example, you've done the martyrdom job and you've sacrificed everything else to be there for other people or whatever else. So how do we sort of reflect on the moment that we're in, the decade, the season, whatever you want to call it? Like, how do we reflect on where we are in our lives right now and take the lessons from the book to apply there?
Well, you want the old man's answer? The old man's
stop calling you old today. It's been the joke of the day.
The old
we
man's
want
answer.
The wise answer.
Yeah, it's like the wise sage.
Yeah, exactly.
The old
Not
one.
the inexperienced
Yeah, exactly.
nonsense.
Novice. Exactly.
Okay, kids, listen, kids. There are two types of games. Okay, and I think we're mixing the games. There is an infinite game and a finite game.
Yeah.
If you think of life as a finite game where you are supposed to win something or achieve something or get to a certain point or realize your ambition, go ahead. It doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, 50, 70, 80, you'll still be always unsatisfied. You'll always think that you haven't achieved. Okay? This is not the game of life at all. The game of life is not a finite game. The game of life is an infinite game where the only purpose of the life is the gameplay itself, right? And so when you beautifully said that there are micro purposes, when you really think about it, what's the definition of micro? Is it my purpose for this minute or this hour or this day or this month or this year? All of them are micro. When you really think about it. And nobody's ever, I don't know of anyone that's ever succeeded somehow to say, and my purpose, when I was 6 is this, and they stayed with that purpose as their macro, if you want to use micro. The truth is, I think that my life's purpose is to do well on this podcast. As soon as I walk out of this door, my life's purpose is going to be to thank Alice for writing this wonderful book with me. And then I'll meet my daughter in the evening, and my life's purpose is going to be to spend that time with my daughter. We overemphasize the idea that we are capable of orchestrating multiple years in advance and achieving something major. That's crap. Every successful person in the world knows for a fact that it's all about A/B testing, that you're going to take a couple of steps, then stop and go like, oh shit, and then go a step back and then go left. And, you know, this is what life is. I would tend to believe, in all honesty, that if you want to live a purposeful but stress-free life, you need a life that is completely aware and in tune with where you are, what your season is, and completely committed to making the best out of it, but to having the time of your life doing it, right? To truly become an amazing gamer, you have to freaking enjoy the game. Otherwise, it doesn't work at all.
Yeah. As Alan Watts says, it's about the dance. There is no start.
Truly is about the dance. Understand, life is an infinite game. There is no purpose. That when you reach the end of the level, you die.
Yeah.
That's the end of the game.
Although there is one thing that you said that I'm surprised about. It sort of sounded like you don't need to set direction.
That's not purpose. That's ambition. That's
Is ambition
different.
bad?
Ambition is wonderful. I have an ambition called 1 billion happy. Wonderful,
Yeah.
right? But it's not.
And that's just because you can't have 1 billion seconds. So. Obviously, but you know, let's not show off.
But can you count how many per second I need to get now? It's like, you know, you don't have a billion seconds.
That will stress you out. You try and work that out every day.
100%, and so it shouldn't be a purpose.
Yeah.
It should be an ambition. An ambition, by the way, that is so much like the game of life, that won't be achieved by me alone. Stop the arrogance, right? The whole idea that the modern capitalist business-driven world drives us to believe is that if I do it right, it will work. If I mess up, it will fail. You haven't lived yet. Most of your biggest moments in your life are fucking pure luck. We know that for a fact. The most successful business people noticed an opportunity when it came their way because they were not fixated on what they thought was their life purpose. That's the skill.
And the leadership angle is being able to bring people on the journey to fulfill it.
100%.
You can't do it on your own.
Yeah. You're not the one that makes it. You're the one that is sent, a few gold coins on the path. And when you observe them, right? And when you tell yourself, ooh, that's fun. Let me play that game for a while and see where it takes me. That's it. That's when you eventually, like Alice so beautifully said, when you do that frequently enough, life goes like, you're ready. Here's your life purpose.
Do you have a different answer? Or if not, I've got a different question.
No, I think I completely agree. And I just...
Don't object to your uncles.
Let him enjoy the time he's got left on us.
Do you agree though? Why? I know this has been the running joke of today. It's like all through the day it's been the theme.
Yeah,
to be fair, it started last night. It started last night. 41?
Let's say 41. I had one person who was a wonderful product manager in one of my previous organizations. Call me, hey Mo, congratulations, hey Mo, and then between brackets, or as I like to call you, Uncle Mo, congratulations.
Uncle Mo.
Yeah, I'm like,
It's better than being great Uncle Mo. That's when you know you're really old.
I'm not gonna make that. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that entrepreneurs are pretty bad at naturally, I would say, is actually, because of the war analogies and everything else, is obviously self-care, yes, and they should be better, and I think there's growing consciousness around it, which is great. But also the other concept you talk a lot about, which is letting it go, being at ease with stuff, because there's a lot of requirement to fight and resist and persist and everything else. So how can we make sense of those two things? How can we fight for what we need to in business and make sure that we are successful, and also know when it's right to let go and just let things be?
80% of what you do is not needed.
80% of what we do is not
needed.
No, but that's just me. For most people, it's about 50-50.
I promise you, I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs. We constantly believe that everything has to be done, right? Not everything has to be done. Not everything has to be done when you're tiny, okay? Yeah. And not everything has to be done by you, right? All of these are myths of bad leadership. Yeah. Right. The trick is absolutely don't let go of the things that matter, but first find out what matters. That difficult boss that I was telling you about, amazing guy, really, in every way. We used to have a weekly review every Thursday. We would discuss the business. He would be very attentive. And then we would discuss the people. He would be looking at me strange. And then we would discuss a specific individual that was very senior in my organization. And he would give me his back, put his feet on his desk, and start to play with his BlackBerry. Right? And at a point in time on the third meeting where he did that, I said, "What's wrong with you? Don't you believe in the value of your people?" And he looked at me almost angry. Okay. And he said, "What? I don't believe in your value. I don't take care of you. I don't protect you." I said, "No, you're amazing with me. But why do you always give me your back when I speak about this person?" And he said, "Every leader takes care of his people, but every good leader knows who his people are first." Right? And he had that ability, that uncompromising ability to prioritize. Right? So he went through a very different cycle than I used to. Tasks came my way before I reported to him, and I prioritized all of them in terms of importance, and then basically tried to finish the top 5. No, to him, tasks came to him, and he basically said, "Even though this is important, I'm not even going to touch it. Not now, and not ever." Right? This is not something that I'm going to invest in. Now, that I believe is the biggest skill of an entrepreneur. Is to actually look at those things and say, "By the way, we want you to be successful." Unstressable is not saying chill and go to Australia. Okay? We're saying we want you to be successful. And one of the most valuable things to do is to focus on what matters. Right? Don't perform everything that comes your way. That's the reason for the 25-hour workday.
Yeah.
And the skill of saying, "This, not gonna touch it. That business, not going to respond to it. That customer, fired. This proposal, never going to be written." That's why you write the exceptional proposal to the customer that matters to close the deal that makes your business.
Seems like a sort of straight line between productivity and unstressable.
100%. This is all about, not in business only, in life.
Yeah.
Right?
A productive life.
How you can perform an amazing conversation, difficult, crucial conversation with your partner without the stress and the fight and the argument. And why? Because you actually did it the right way. You limit, you learn, and you listen. These are your 3 accountabilities in Unstressable, right? And it applies to everything. It applies to your business. It applies to your relationships. It applies to your relationship with yourself. It applies to your health. It applies to your joy. It applies to your future. This is not telling you don't engage in the modern world. This is saying so much of your engagement in the modern world is at 9,000 RPM. Shift.
And it feels like there's also, again, a scale, because there's letting go of control. And entrepreneurs obviously love control, and can be very obsessive about what they need to spend time on, as you've just identified. And then there's also at the other end of the spectrum is letting go so much that you let go of yourself, you let go of your health, you start to go into self-loathing versus self-care. And so there's probably like a healthy middle ground here. Is that what we're basically aiming at?
Yeah, and I think 100%, but also I think you need to recognize when you need to stop doing stuff on your business and when you need to stop doing stuff with yourself. So it's like that difference between, okay, if you are, and I get this at the moment, we've had sort of weird, like doing Unstressable with corporates and building our membership, and you've been, busy with other things, and I've been sort of like, okay, right, had quite a lot to do. And I was like, I found myself in that state for a few days when I was in Dubai being like hamster wheel. And I was like, whoa, okay, difference is I have the awareness now to step back and notice. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to actually just continue like this? Or am I going to actually just block out 1 hour today where I will tell myself I will not think about anything to do with, the membership, Unstressable, etc. And I will go for a walk on the beach, and I will actually take in that moment. I will be purposely present for that hour, because what that hour will give me when I come back is a different perspective. It's not fear in my head, it's not stress, and I can see what actually matters. I can look at my priorities, and I can work backwards and actually get way more done. Like Mo said, nothing is always a priority. It's like actually looking, but we don't have that perspective when we're stressed. And so I think it's really understanding, okay, when do you need to work on yourself and putting that in for that hour, because what you'll get on return from your business is just like 10x.
It's amazing. There's so many lessons in Unstressable that sort of they come back to both philosophical and spiritual lessons that you learn through going through the experience of life. And I certainly resonated with so much from here. But just sort of to recap, the 4 types of stress, like that kind of awareness of understanding. And I think that's probably, to me personally, I'm sure different people have different things in the book, but for me that was so valuable because, yeah, I think we're all different, and someone will be more emotional and someone will be more spiritual. So where you feel that, it's very important to give awareness to it.
100%. We have a quiz, and Mo and I, it's so funny because, you know, my biggest stress, modality that I have to work with, that element is my mind. You know, my mental stress. I have low stress scores on the quiz, but it's like my mind's my challenge.
Yeah.
Moses is physical health,
Yeah.
as in physical stress.
Yeah.
It's age.
And yeah. And so, yeah, when you know what your primary is, you
Yeah.
can really then work with that.
Yeah, and it might change throughout your life.
100%. We're never always the same.
And through the year, through the
Yeah.
week,
Yeah.
right? So it's the parts that you don't attend to that will become more stressed for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so, like a lot of this stuff, it's like get the awareness of what's going on, create the plan of how to deal with it.
Get the awareness, get the commitment
Yeah.
that you're going to work on it, then create the plan, then start to do the work.
And then, like all habits, fucking nail it. First time out the park, become unstressable.
In one day.
It is actually quite easy for some of the exercises that we share.
Yeah.
You will literally nail it the first time. And it will take away like 60% of your stress. Like the limit exercise that you wrote, Alice, is very clear, very straightforward.
So share that with us. So actually, to wrap up the episode, if we can you each share a good example of an unstressable activity that's spot on for entrepreneurs?
Yes.
Or, I mean, just busy people, right? But that's kind of the same, what I'm classifying.
So yeah, one small one, which I think helps everyone, is that you can limit the micro stresses in your life. So we call those nuisances in the book. And that's those micro external stresses. Everything's sort of sub-trauma, but that really add up in your stress threshold. So it's your aggressive factory setting alarm. It's your multiple WhatsApp notifications all the time. It is, you know, the upsetting email, getting stuck in traffic, watching the news 17 times a day, hoping that you'll hear something different. That all floods your system with stress without us realizing, because our system hasn't caught up to the modern times. It still thinks the tiger's coming out of the bushes when your boss is sending you an upsetting email or what a deal's gone through, whatever it is. And so if you can look at, okay, what actual nuisances do I have in my life right now? Do I have a morning alarm that is on factory setting that's flooding me with cortisol as soon as I wake up?
Yeah, I call her Margot.
There you go.
Factoring something upstairs. Yeah.
Change that, for example, change it to something soothing. And, you know, limit what you can. Put your phone in a drawer for an hour in the evening and be fully present and don't touch it. The average person today touches and swipes their phone over 2,500 times a day. That's insane. So, you know, the reality is you can limit these micro stresses. So if everyone listening can actually take an inventory of, okay, what nuisances do I have in my life? What are 5 or 3 things I'm going to limit this week? Am I going to change my alarm? Am I going to not watch the news 17 times a day this week? Am I going to actually put my phone away for an hour and be present with my loved ones in the evening and give them my fully divided attention? The reduction of stress on your threshold from limiting the needless stress in your life, is what we call it. What that actually creates to be able to have resilience to manage the stuff that you can't control is huge, because you've, you know, given the level playing field of capacity.
Yeah, you can be very, very assertive about that as well. You can actually sit down over the next weekend with a piece of paper and write down everything that stressed you last week. And so that you have an inventory of everything that caused you stress, and then start to strike out the ones that you can take and get rid of. You can also, by the way, reduce their intensity by basically adding some joy to them. So if your commute is stressful, why don't you add some good music to it? My advice, being in the presence of His Majesty, the founder of Heights, is take care of your body. And you know,
I told him he has to address me. That's from now on.
I did get sent to prison for a long, time in the empire of Heights, because I once said, I called him Dan directly, like, Your Excellency, Your Highness. And Alice mentioned that my biggest stress is my physical stress. Yeah. You have no idea when you reduce when you eat an anti-inflammatory diet, when you take care of your gut, when your physical form is able to perform properly, when you prioritize sleep. Alice writes this beautiful sentence, very, very simple. She says, your sleep is more important than your work. Right. And I know it shocks a lot of people, but truly, when you sleep, you work better. Understand, when you're stressed, your prefrontal cortex, the one asset that you need most for your work, is dedicated as a priority to figuring out what's stressing you, to figuring out the threat. It's constantly looking at, is there a tiger? Is there a tiger? Is there a tiger? So many cycles are wasted in this. And when your body is stressed, this threat is coming from within you. Okay. And all of the joint pains and the back pains and all of this is taking away from your productivity. So definitely take care of your body. I'd probably say sugar, gone. Like literally, as much as a cookie gives us a short-term joy, the long-term impact of a cookie, especially when you're this old, is quite, the inflammation of sugar is actually quite significant. And I think really people need to become more attentive to that.
No sugar. Take your heights, refer to me as your excellency.
Heights, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Tick.
And exactly, and follow Dan and everything that Dan does, because that's where your health becomes better. How much did you say you're gonna pay?
In your experience.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so
thank you
much.
for
And
having
congratulations. So Unstressable available on Amazon and all independent booksellers too. Let's keep them in business.
Absolutely.
And already #1 bestseller in the country. So congrats.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.